First, I want to share this experience. Have you guys ever seen your computer in a different light and suddenly feel like I'm a much grosser person than I thought I was? The lights up here are very bright, and the professional who set up my computer was generous in not making more. I'll eat less donuts at my desk, is what I think. Hey, I'm Nick. I'm from Chicago. I work in the DX wing, Developer Experience wing at Apollo. And we've been looking at Agentic UI. A lot of the things that you'll see at the conferences this week are finished things that you can pick up. This is exploration we're doing, some thoughts we're thinking, some digging we're doing. I want to share what our research and where we think this is pointing a little bit. What's the shape of Agentic UI? What does this mean? How is it useful? And how might we start building tools around this? I talked to a lot of you last night, and some of you are way far ahead, and you're building Agentic UI experiences. Some of you are not clear on what Agentic UI, what that set of syllables means. And so hopefully this will give a little bit to each of you. We'll start, let's see. How my hook is, you're closer than you think. Even those people who don't even know what these syllables mean yet, you're closer than you think to having Agentic UI. What's the subhead here is that building Agentic UI feels abstract and hard, but the raw ingredients already live inside your current UI. Okay, and so I'll be talking about, this is the framing I'll talk through these ideas with. What am I going to do? Talk first about the Agentic loop and the Agentic UI loop. The section called You're Closer Than You Think, a little demo, some discussion. At the end, I'll do a Q&A. I'll try to answer questions, and we'll see how that goes. Okay. So starting here, the Agentic loop. It's not back there. It's up there. Hey, there's a bunch of, this is emerging space. There's a bunch of different names for this. There's a sensing, reasoning, action loop. There's all kinds of different ways to describe this, but an agent, every agentic system essentially has a goal it's trying to accomplish. Some context about where it is right then, some intelligence, and then the ability to take some actions on your behalf. For me, the most common kind of agentic experience I have is coding. Is everybody doing agentic coding right now? Is most people? Who's not? Oh, that's a bad question. OK. Guys, it just was like in February of this year that whole thing started. Okay? In January of this year, I might get a TypeScript error, the most vexing part of my programming experience. And I would go over to ChatGPT and I would say, TypeScript said this. What do you think? Give me some ideas. What's this mean? And then I would apply some intelligence and bring that back to my code and do something probably wrong and ask ChatGPT again. All right. February, I say to Claude, hey, Claude, there's a line on line 87 of this specific file. There's a TypeScript error. Either tell me what's going on, or fix it for me, or refactor my TypeScript, whatever I want it to do. Right? I have this goal that I set. I give it to the intelligence, Claude, and it takes some action. Sometimes it says, I can't do anything for you. I don't understand the problem either. I need more information. Sometimes it just changes the code for me. It takes some action based on the context and based on its intelligence. And this idea of going from an awareness of context and goals, applied some intelligence, and taking some action, that's the agentic loop. Okay? By the way, my first job in Chicago was as an administrative assistant, and this was my loop. This is a loop for human agents as well. Some awareness of your context and goals, applied to an intelligence, apply intelligence to it and take some actions. I have a scheduling conflict this afternoon. I need you to fix it. Then I would do some stuff to make that happen. This is also, by the way, just the general mode of a problem-solving loop. And from this point forward, I could just give a self-help talk about how, if you know what your goal is, you apply some intelligence and take the right actions, you'll get to where you're going. OK, that's just a little joke for you. Totally separate universe. Our existing UIs. We have a ton of awareness of the context and goals of the users. We have purchase history, personalization, what's in their cart right now. I use a site you guys probably have heard of called Amazon, and they know so much about me. That my dog poops 93 times a month, that if a book is more than 700 pages, I'm going to buy the audiobook 3 weeks later. My entire history is not necessarily in the UI, but is known by the system that supports the UI. There is also a curated list of what actions I can take at that time. I might be able to execute a search, navigate to a route, update some reactive state. What's interesting and I want to call out here is that's a curated list. So I can't take every action from every page. I can take a curated list of what actions I'm permitted and what actions are in context for me right then. That's all known by your UI. I can't put something in my cart if I haven't searched yet. I can't buy it now if I don't have credit card information stored in the system. The UI knows this already. So you have this like, maybe the greatest sense of what your context and goals are when you go to a web page, out of any computer system, it knows what your context is and what your goals are. And it's built out of actions that can help you get there. These actions are likely well-tested, componentized, and type-safe. That's what it says at the bottom of this slide. OK, back to this guy. Today in the website, you're the intelligence, right? The site knows your awareness, your context and goals, and it knows what action can take, and it tries to prompt you to take the next step, to put this in your cart, to click buy now, to refine your search. You play the role of this intelligence. And this is a little joke I'm telling you, but it also is to kind of nudge us into the awareness that our web apps are already designed to move an intelligence through actions that increase the context and move that intelligence toward its goal. This loop doesn't talk at all about how that intelligence is implemented, and neither does the rest of this presentation. We're just going to talk about how these guys talk to each other. Okay. Dun, dun. So how do we take these two concepts, this agentic loop, and the fact that we already have a ton of awareness of context and goals and a list of actions, and kind of mush them together so that we get natural language interactions with folks. We get a composable UI, and we can build human-in-the-loop interactions. I'm going to show a little demo. Hey, so this is a simple idea, simple example, just to show some of the concepts I was talking about. Earlier today, Matt said we're going to see the search box replaced with the chat box. I'm just going to show that first. I'm in this front desk AI, and it's asking me where I'd like to go. I'm a guest right now. And I'm going to say, where should I travel? Also, I will fail the typing test. This guy's great question. In this case, my travel assistant is asking me some follow-up questions. I prefer beaches. And this is really just showing that chat remembers the conversation we're having, that it's set up to be a travel agent. This is the kind of, I think, chat window that you would expect as a first step in an agentic experience. If I switch over to a user, now I'm going to log in John Doe just by clicking John Doe's name. This is a low security site. And I'm going to say, where should I travel? And this system prints out, just for debugging for this demo, some information we know about the user. We know what their route is. We know that this user has specific activities they're interested in, and they've taken these past trips. And so now the assistant knows more about the user. We already know that their goal, we're already in the context of a travel site. So we know a ton about the user's context, but now we know some personalized context, and we can give a better response to this user. Let's say, based on your love of nature, adventure, and photography, and you've enjoyed these, I suggest Patagonia. I'm going to say, tell me more about the first. And again, I'm just showing that we have a chat with memory that has some intelligence to it about travel. I'm going to switch over to Sarah Johnson, and I'm going to say, where should I travel? And again, we know some details about Sarah. She likes mid-range travel. She's in New York and has taken these trips. And we get totally different recommendations. OK, this is cool. Hey, we know enough about the user to give them a better recommendation. And again, if you think about the Amazon, or I'm mostly from .coms, so I'm going to talk mostly in those terms. But if you're moving someone down a purchase funnel, you know a ton about them. And in this case, I've just added a few details. But you really know a lot about what this user's done before on your site, what navigation states they've gone through, where they are in a purchase process or an intent process, what they might have in their cart at the moment, what they might have left in their cart the last time they were here. Search for, and then I'm going to show some actions. So I'm going to say search for hotels in Tokyo. And I'm going to get a couple of options. When I get my response back, again, there's some debugging on the screen here to show you, but the first thing the agent does is call a method on my UI called search hotel inventory, and it provides some arguments. They're a little outside the box here because of the weird zoom, but it structures a location argument. It guesses that I'm talking about these dates, and my budget is mid-range. And it redrew the UI so that now I have some hotel search results over here. Let's try show me fancier hotels. And because it's a demo, the tiles are exactly the same, but it does try to send you to fancier hotels. It changes the budget to luxury. And then if I try to book flights the same weekend, it will build, again, rebuild the UI. It calls a tool that does that, and then it gives me a response. This is what I did. I searched several flights from New York to Tokyo. It knows that this user is from New York, et cetera. Okay. I'm going to go back to slides. Hey, that's the whole demo. Oh, wait, I have one more. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. You could also search for deals, and it would search to the last place you. I'll just act it out. Okay. So hey, this is just the same loop again. I'm just trying to highlight that we already know a ton about the user. And if we talk about this loop, the only thing we need is to layer in the intelligence. We already have not just awareness of context and goals and not just actions, but almost a, if you squint a little bit, a finite state machine of the role of the places a user can go and what they need to get there. We can give the intelligence enough information to create those calls, those tool calls, and those arguments for us. I'm going to show a little more about that. I want to talk a little bit more about the match between current web properties and this technology. The first demo that we tried to build was a sheet music generator. And so you could type into the sheet music generator, build a 32-bar progression that has jazz tones and is singable. And it was beautiful. It would build out a nice sheet music. It would have all the manuscript. It looked beautiful. Nothing was playable or singable. And as we started to build more into the demo, we realized that this space is huge. This is a huge space. Creating music is a huge creative space, right? And some of you may be working on this problem, so I don't want to say too much about it. But most of our websites are the work that we do is on a very narrow path. There's a clear set of outcomes and goals, right? I'm going to walk a little bit through the mechanics of this demo that I show. Oh, I don't have to do that. I can do it here. This technology is so cool up here. I'm talking to you about Agentic UI, but there are big monitors in front of me, and my eyes are very attracted to them. OK, so I'm on a travel website. I want to go someplace sunny. I type this into my prompt. We send it over to the runtime. The runtime has a brief conversation with the LLM, and we come back to the user with, how about Aruba? OK, that's the basic process we just saw. I'm going to go into a little more detail, same set of slides. When we're in the app layer, we have all kinds of stuff we know about the user. So we don't have to just send the prompt, I want to go somewhere sunny. We can register various different parts of the state that we know about the user. We can register that they have a frequent flyer program with American Airlines, for instance, or that they already have something in their chart. They already have a hotel booked. We don't want to send the entire user state over. We want to send a limited chunk that's relevant to this, the intent of the user in this page. But we can register that context and send it over with the prompt. When we get to the runtime, we can apply a workflow. And so an example of a workflow is, in the demo, is that the first user got some follow-up questions, right? So the agent didn't have enough information to make travel plans for that user. But so that workflow says if you don't have enough information, ask some follow-up questions, these kind of follow-up questions. For the second user, there was enough information for the agent to guess. And so those two choices, that's part of a workflow. Another part of our workflow in this is don't answer any non-travel related questions. So if I had asked for it to generate a jazz progression, it would say, hey, I'm a travel agent. Okay? And then there's part of the workflow which is to make up dates. So if I'd said I want to go to Aruba, it would guess 3 weeks in the future, guess a 5-day vacation, and if you have a family, it would guess the number of people in your family, just to get you started in the results. Okay. After we apply the workflow, we might want to enrich the content. And the dates example I just gave is a really good example for this. I found OpenAI terrible at guessing dates. So next weekend, terrible at it. Last weekend in March, terrible at it. So I might want to have a local function that kind of decodes this information. I might send a service call. Okay, so I might enrich my context by the UI sends over the user's context as user ID 5. Let's rehydrate that a server side. And we might enrich the prompt. So mine says, you're a plucky travel assistant. You love to help people figure out their best travel. And you pay really close attention to people's preferences in previous trips. This is an example of enriched prompt. So then when we talk to the intelligence, we have a much richer conversation. We're not saying just like, where do I go? I want to go someplace sunny. It's Steve, who has a family, who has a flight preference, who we've described to the agent how we want it to behave, et cetera, et cetera. I've left one thing. I'll leave that alone. And so we get a much better answer. How about Aruba, Sharon? The best time to go is in 6 weeks. Would you like to know about snorkeling? Okay. I left one thing off here. I'm going to talk about that, tools. But you can see that, again, the picture I'm trying to draw is you already know a ton of stuff that helps make the agent very smart about your user and their current goals and current state. Sorry, it's a really hard habit to break. What I left off here, what's marked out is tools. And I'm just going to run the same loop again. Oh, at this point, the whole list of actions that I've described is just answer the question. Well, let's add some more. Inside your UI already, in this example, I already have a search function. I already have a render function. I have a route function that can be called based on user interactions, right? The user events that occur. I can wrap these up in a tool declaration and give them a name and a description of when they get called and a list of structured arguments that it takes to call them. So search, I might just have a single search parameter. In the hotel example that I showed in the demo, there was what's your location, check in, check out, and what's your budget level. Okay? You can register these functions as tools and pass them along to the runtime, which then passes those along to the intelligence, the LLM, the agent. In this case, in my example, I've showed travel deals and search for flights. And these will each come with enough metadata for the agent to decide if it's appropriate to call that method then. When I searched for flights, it didn't call the search hotel method. When I searched for hotels, it only called the search hotel method. At this point, we can say not only how about Aruba, but call show travel deals for Aruba. And you guys saw that the page refreshed with, or redrew with hotel search results. Okay. I'm going so fast. I'm going to try to slow down and talk slower. Hey, this last little bit on this part of the slide is about roles for each of these actors. And really wanted to call out that we more or less expect that only parts of your UI will run through this system. You're probably going to have an agentic layer that responds to multi-channel. You're probably going to have an SMS, mobile client, phone tree, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea here is to keep these concerns separated, that for agentic UIs, we want to, we have an app and a runtime that manages the communication with the agent. That agent is available for other intelligence jobs as well. Okay, what are we doing? All right, so I said at the beginning, we're not presenting today a finished solution. We're exploring this space a lot. It's an emerging space. There's not a clear thought leadership. We're trying to figure out the possibilities and how to make those possibilities manifest in your software. We're trying to figure out the best place to go first, and we're prototyping tooling to support this agentic UI development, trying to build a smart roadmap to the first release. Some of the questions that we're asking that are really vexing, that are hard to get to, is like, how in a deterministic system do you deal with non-deterministic actors? Especially in, like, I used a travel demo here, And there's so much feature flagging. There's so much fine-tuning of experiments. There's so much like tracing users through their system. And how does that change when one of the actors of the thing calling methods is non-deterministic and may do mostly what you want it to do, but also has some agency to make other choices? How do we do that with our safe web properties that we have today? What affordances are needed for slower and perhaps wrong responses? So my experience with Claude, again, is that some things work really great, but there's no way I would trust it to do tons and tons of, a huge chunk of work at the same time. And there's not a space, in the UI to say, make a plan. Let me see your plan. I'll check in your, the kind of extended engagement that I would have with an agent while coding. So how do we make affordances for users when things go wrong, when they're not sure about the answer? How do we help them build confidence? How does the security model change? How do we build something, and then how do we, Apollo, make something around this entire system that makes it easy to develop, but is also robust enough to handle your security concerns and operational concerns? We're at the beginning. Under the hood of the demo, we used AGUI. How many folks are using AGUI right now? Oh, yes. Did we speak yesterday? OK. AGUI is built by folks at Copilot Kit. This is a protocol that helps with the communication protocols and the patterns, especially a conversational memory pattern. They have a nice working group. They're early on. The standard is emergent, but it's very cool. They're thinking cool thoughts. I encourage you to take a look at it. We're building on our side some React-like tooling, and so far this set of problems of identifying states and identifying tools seems to fit really well into the React hook pattern. And so the demo that we have here is all built with a layer of React-like hooks that declare the state and declare the tools and reactive state exchange between the conversational memory and the application. And then a thin middleware for managing communication, building in observability, how to do traffic shaping, how to manage the size of your context window, and other orchestration-like concerns. OK. Pretty soon, it'll be question and answer. Key takeaways here is this agentic loop is really interesting. It applies to many of the agentic problems that we're concerned about in the industry in general. And again, maps really well, I think, to our history of building UIs with a rich vein of context and information about the user, a clear set of goals, and a curated set of actions that can already be taken. There is a different story, or an additional story, about a radical rebuild that Agentic UI will change the way that everybody does everything, that we'll use different devices to interact with our web properties, that we'll buy things totally differently or through a chat interface. And I think all of that is true. I think all of those things are true. But right now, we have so much value in the systems that we've built, and they're so clearly designed to get users to their end goals, that layering in this intelligence, I think, can be really big right now. We're very close. OK. Hey, that's what I got. Thank you. This portion is question and answer, and on each side of the room, there are lit up microphones. If you have a question, please come to the microphone, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Hi, my name is Young. Thanks for the presentation. I had a question not strictly related to this, but I was watching the keynote early this morning about the MCP server.
Yes.
And then in that demo, I guess the team was defining tools for like the LLM to use. And I was wondering, like, because the schema is like open and available, why do we need to build our own tools for the LLM to use instead of just having LLM just go wild on top of the schema?
Yeah. The tools is a way to expose a curated list of actions, whereas the schema may describe your entire, a larger surface area. In this area, in this case, we exposed a tool on the UI that's search hotels, and it describes a specific action that the LLM could take on your behalf. And that's more information, that's more refined than just handing a schema in. You're more likely to get a specific outcome than you want searching for hotels with a specific structured list of arguments if you talk in terms of a tool definition. And one of the things that's really interesting about exploring this space is how much can we derive from the schema? How much can we derive from the type-safe methods that you have in your UI today? But I think that there is a clear need for both the well-structured schema and some tools that talk about how to navigate that schema.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
Hello. We've seen a couple demos of like AI streaming chat kind of stuff, and like all of that goes through HTTP and not GraphQL or subscriptions or anything like that that I've seen so far. It's all the AI SDK. I was wondering if there were conversations about like using something like GraphQL instead of like just plain old HTTP streaming
Yes.
internally.
Absolutely. OK, so I don't, just for my demo, so far, hey, we are really interested in finding a clear definition of the problem space first. So we're really agnostic about what tools we're using in the lab right now, so to speak. But we are constantly asking questions about how do we connect this to the graph? How do we leverage graph? How do we, at what stage, once we have the core problem well defined, then how do we start to interact with the rest of the system that you're used to using? How do we make the most value out of the graph that you have today? Mm-hmm. That's really important, but we're underbaked at the moment to be, even talking about what protocols we're using and what transport we're using.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Howdy.
Hey, nice presentation.
Thank you.
So this morning we saw that example of Etsy within ChatGPT.
Yes.
And before all this AI rush, Google in search has been trying to do something with result snippets and trying to control the experience without leaving Google,
Yes.
Shows the product, tries you to buy there, try to make the reservation right there without leaving that space. What do you think it's the aim for in AI, in chat?
Right.
Are these experiences going to happen within ChatGPT, for example, or they're going to leave ChatGPT in an example like yours, and then the company or whoever is doing that experience is going to own it using the LLMs to complete the experience?
Yeah. I think that everything is going to happen, OK? And so one is it's clear that UI properties, like chunks of your UI or chunks of your branded experience, are going to move into chat. That's where the most energy is right now. That's what MCP UI is attempting to solve. That's what the OpenAI SDK that came out earlier this week is trying to solve. And I think that there is a market for that. I'm curious, can I just say, like, hey, do you all think there's a market for that? Are you guys ready to buy stuff inside of chat? I think some are. And then I think there's a different category of products. What's a good example for me of that? Listen, I was making a joke earlier. Every time I buy a large book, I buy it in paper, and then it's too heavy. I buy it later electronically, right? Can I just say to chat, like, do the thing that I always do? Yeah. But when I'm picking out shoes, I want to see a big branded experience. And I think I still want to go to Zappos, and I want it to be better there. But I like that they have thought for years about what's the intent to selection, to pre-purchase, to purchase, to post-purchase experience. And I don't think I'm a little skeptical that it will immediately translate all back to chat. Right?
It shouldn't.
I think but anybody making bets right now has got to make side bets as well, OK? But I think that both are going to evolve pretty quickly. That our UIs are going to go out into the world and live in chats that we don't control. And we're going to bring chat and agentic intelligence into our apps. I think both of those things are going to happen. And there's different use cases for each one. I think travel's another really good one. Like if I traveled out to San Francisco every 6 weeks for a business meeting, man, I would just like to simplify that down to this time I'm going on Friday and coming back on Sunday. And I can see doing that in the chat. But planning my family vacation, I'm a few steps away from that. I want to marinate in the site. I want to marinate in the experience of looking at different things. I want to see a level of detail that is constrained by the imagination of the people who sell travel, instead of constrained by the shape of ChatGPT.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Hooray. Hello.
Hello. To maybe continue on that question, so just to restate some definitions again, you demoed AGUI, which is adding tools and context from existing apps and making those available to LLMs. MCP-UI, which is the ChatGPT owns the experience and it's able to render UIs within ChatGPT. That's MCP-UI.
Yeah.
So with the tools, with MCP-UI, I think that's pretty straightforward. But when you're doing AGUI, how do you decide what the tools are? The tools actually search hotels, or is the tool to, I'm going to search hotels by calling an API, and the action you take is just to render a list of cards? But because then if you actually have the action of searching hotels and that's done in the UI, you would also want to have an MCP tool for MCP UI that search hotels, but that's not the same as the AGUI search hotels. Now, like, we're duplicating logic. So where do you draw the line of, like, what am I doing and all these MCP things that are going to be separate?
Yeah. Okay, so did I say out loud, one of my slides was, what we're trying to find right now is boundaries. What's the right boundaries for each of these experiences? I think that we do want to minimize the amount of rework that we're doing, but there is a significant difference between the sending chat your UI and bringing chat into your UI. I think those are very different problems, and the reusability, I'm not clear on what it is yet, okay? The first part of your question is, how are the tools defined? And there is a schema for registering a tool in AGUI. So you might have any function, and you're going to wrap it with some metadata. As far as a tool, this function is called search hotels. My description of that is when a user asks to search for hotels, then call this method. And the structured arguments it takes are X, Y, and Z, or whatever the arguments are. It's not really X, Y, and Z. It's so the tool is an abstraction on top of the methods that you have today. And I think that's very similar. I don't want to get out of my lane, but it's very similar to MCP, that you would register something that a piece of functionality that the agent could call in your system. And that's how I'm conceptualizing the UI tools as well. Hey, is that a clear answer, and is that helpful?
Maybe specifically, so you're not getting any rendering. Like, the UI is still doing all that.
The UI is still doing all of that. Yes, thank you. Thanks for asking the question. Thanks for clarifying. In this system, the UI is 100% responsible. It receives some messages to update the search results. But the UI, none of the rendered UI is coming from the LLM or the agent. Just the instructions to call a method that exists on your existing UI. Yeah? Okay, thanks.
Hi there. Firstly, I'd like to commend you for standing under these lights because they're really, really bright. I've got a sore head from like the 30 seconds I've been standing here.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of kind of redrawing the UIs on the fly with LLMs, but obviously there's a lot of tokens going back and forth there. That could be quite costly and quite slow. Have you ever considered using something like Tiny LLM and running that in the user's browser? Because that would be quicker and it would offload the cost from the travel company's app onto the user.
That's a great question. At this point, no, but there's a lot of reasons why having a tiny LLM locally would be, especially in this case, because we're not really taxing, the chat, the larger chat, is maybe taxing the LLM slightly, but the work of determining that they search for a hotel, the prompt was search for a hotel, and we have a tool called Search Hotel, that feels like a lightweight problem for an LLM. So no, but I'm fascinated, and I will today.
Okay.
Thank you. Hey, any other questions? Yeah?
What do you think
Oh my gosh. And so that's the end of this presentation. Okay, so hey, there's a state management problem here that we are still working our way through. Hey, we think that it should be added to the demo. We think that it's the next thing. We are thinking big thoughts about that, but there's a lot of reasons why why the LLM actually taking a state-changing mutation or executing a state-changing mutation adds new problems. And one is around safety of your backend systems. And there's another state management problem, which is that how do you complete the loop? There is a callback from the tool, so the tool can say, I successfully deleted a user. But we're really worried about the state where I don't know if you said that mutation, that's the one we constantly think about. It's like delete a user, okay? And so the LLM believes it has, but it failed. What's this failure recovery mechanism? Okay, so we're deep in the lab on that, but I don't have a better answer for you right now, except for complicated. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. Yeah.
Have you thought about kind of combining this with the server-driven UI? I guess that's kind of where this can go. You can ask a question.
Yeah.
It'll tell you how to best render. Sorry.
That might.
Hey, this question is, have we thought about how to meld, merge, or use this together with server-driven UI? So there are other systems or complementary systems where an agent might generate a whole module itself. It might be given HTML structure, and instead of filling in the arguments, it fills in the remaining HTML structure and then sends it back to you. Have we thought about how those blend together? Again, this is a question of boundaries. Right now, we're really focused on what does this problem solve. We're aware of that. And I think that I'm still trying to figure out, is there a system where someone would use both at the same time in the same system? I think that each company is likely to do both. Each company is likely to produce server-side modules, and I think that's, again, really close to the place that MCP UI is playing, that the recent OpenAI SDK is playing, that you generate server-side UI components and send them forward to whatever their destination is. We have talked to some clients that that's the way they're moving for their agentic UI experience, is they're generating server-side components. At the moment, I think they have basically the same advantages and disadvantages that server-side rendered HTML has everywhere, right? It's a little deeper and a little wider, but there's advantages to server-side generated and there's advantages to client-side generated. And I think they map pretty closely in this space. Anybody else?
I think this one more.
You
I
see
have a question about authentication. When you're doing the demos, you are expecting the LM. If we have a MCP servers, Apollo MCP servers have a GraphQL, you are expect using the same tokens or different tokens, or how do you want to differentiate? The user is doing some actions from the UI, or you want to use the agent doing some. How do you take on authentication part?
At the moment, I see it as a layered problem. So the user or the agent behaving as the user has certain permissions given to them in the UI. They send a message to a backend system, and that backend system, when negotiating with an agent, may have a different set of permissions. And that's OK. Those permissions may be defined at the layer that's making the calls. Does that make sense? My UI has a list of things that it's permitted to do. It's permitted to make certain requests. It's permitted to take certain actions. Those are not always the same or one-to-one with the actions that my backend system is allowed to take. And so each of those actors is going to have their own permission scheme. I'm not sure I'm answering your question. Do you want to follow up?
Yeah, that's something, because I was trying to using you guys the Apollo MCP servers. There's several things we try to solve. One is that for the authentication part, we are trying to do, because currently for the authentication part, our approach is that we will have a process per users. So for each users, we will create a dedicated MCP servers for that users.
Yeah.
That solves the questions. But that involves several things. One is that it's some kind of scalable. We're using Cloud RUM. It's scalable, but it's not efficient. And also, it takes time to have a code start problems. Sometimes because it's loading in the schemas, it takes time. Another problems we are thinking about is that because we are basically using the MCP servers to talk in the backend, right? But there's some logic from the validations in the front end we already have, how we can introduce that, some validation formatting, some problems also introduced with the Apollo MCP servers. That's several things we're questioning about.
Yeah, okay. And so I'm granted some permissions on with my UI system, and then the call that I make eventually goes to an MCP server, and there's a different set of permissions there, or there's a different permission scheme there. And are we thinking about how to thread AGUI or Agentic UI permissions together with a collaborating MCP server? Is that your question?
I think I can follow up after.
Let's chat after this. Okay, good. I like that. I have 1 minute. If no one has any questions, you can shout out insults for 1 minute.
Did you publish your demo?
Did I publish my demo? It is not published. I will ask you about this later. How do I publish it? Can we? It's not published yet, but I'll take an action item after this.